First, I'd like to welcome everybody here. My name is Andrew Morley, for any of you that don't know me. I'm a member of the community on track, the committee that's kind of pulling this whole idea together. I'm kind of a newcomer to the group. Dane and I kind of jumped on about the same time, but there's some people that have been at it a lot longer than us. There's Liz Brown, her mother June, Anthony, Dr. Alamo, Heather Brewer, Nick Scott's been involved, Coach Dion's on the board helping us now, and Lauren Brown. Sorry if I'm missing anybody else. Sing out. And we've had a great working relationship right from the very beginning with not only the trustees, but the administration, Eileen and Dan, have all pitched in to really help us get this going. I'll just give you a quick history lesson of kind of how we got to where we are and where we're at, and then Coach Scott, Coach Dion, Dana are going to do part of the presentation. And what I ask is if you have any questions, either jot them down if you have a memory like mine and can't remember them probably within the next hour. And at the end, we'll open it up, but just that way, you know, a question you might have in the beginning might get answered somewhere through the presentation. So, but we will open it up at the end, take any questions or comments anybody has. So to start, I won't even pretend to know how long ago, but there was a group that came together and wanted to see some kind of a track in town. I'm not 100% sure if it was quite to the extent of a competitive track or more of a place that our track team could practice. And it's kind of evolved into more of a track and athletic complex is what we're striving, shooting for. Being able to put a quality athletic field in the middle will help incorporate a lot more students and youth instead of just a track with a kind of an empty space in the middle. So what we did is, there's been a group for quite a few years now that have put on the Lobster Roll 5K with the intentions of using that money to kind of kick off the design of the track and moving forward with it. We've been in contact with a couple of potential donors that had expressed some interest in possibly helping to fund the construction of a track, but we didn't have enough solid information and real plan, you know, that somebody would get on board behind. So knowing kind of how much the cost of even just the design work was going to run, we went to the trustees and asked them if they would help along with the money that we already had raised to get us to a point where we had substantial enough plans that we could go to some of these potential donors that they would feel comfortable, you know, pledging money towards the project. So in working with the coaches, Coach Scott and Coach Dion had a meeting with all the coaches that sports would be involved in the facility, being it field hockey, soccer, track, football, am I missing any?
Probably baseball too.
Yeah, all the coaches, you know, kind of got together and threw in ideas, kind of a wish list of what they'd like to see. And what we came out of that with is what you see up here. It's an 8-lane oval. It's got 8 lanes on the straightaway for your sprinting and hurdle events, and then 8 lanes all the way around the oval. This particular design right now has got the shot put on the inside, and it'll be thrown on, or is that discus? I'm sorry, discus. Discus will be on the inside. It actually has a pole vault pit, long jump pits. And then you'll see to the outside, to the top of the picture, the long stripe with the box would be your long jump pit, and your shot put with the triangle in the square there represented. It's got seating to start for 500 spectators. It'll have a press box. All of the, there'll be a means from the press box into the field for all the timing equipment for track meets. So we'll have all the hardware we need to hold, you know, high level competitive track meets, be it state meets, conference meets. The positioning, we kind of got to the point where the exact positioning of everything, you know, we got it to the best of where we think we'd like it. You know, everything can be tweaked a little more, but we got to the point where in the construction phase, there's probably going to be something along the way that's going to dictate, well, this has got to move a little here, a little there. But this we feel is a good, solid footprint to start from. Like I say, Coach Scott kind of worked with Gale and Associates, who was the engineering company that we're working with, that's done the design work. He worked with them in getting the oval kind of to the optimum size that would work great for track, but would also enable us to put a field in the middle of it that would accommodate as many sports as we could with regulation size fields. One of the reasons for going maybe as elaborate as this looks is down the road there's some good potential for raising money on an annual basis and hosting some of the bigger events. I have a friend of mine who's the athletic director at Morse High School, and Morse just hosted this Class A, B, C, I don't know if there's a D soccer, but they hosted a weekend of all the state class championship soccer games. And he said that even after their boosters kicking back a little more than what the MPA was looking for, they still netted just under $7,000 in one weekend in concessions. And he said not only was it good for them from a finance standpoint for the track or for their facility, but also, you know, it just brought a tremendous amount of people to town for that weekend. In the middle, the athletic field you see there is an infilled synthetic turf surface. It will be permanently lined from the factory with the lining for football, field hockey, and soccer. The majority of the lines for those sports go across the field, which is easy to put in at the factory. Anything that goes along the field, say like the hash marks for the football field, lacrosse markings, we do have a youth program in town, but like anything that's an arch or runs the long way of the field is expensive to have put in. And what happens is you know, it just kind of gets convoluted with all the lines that you're looking at. But what can be done in the spring, if there's sports we want to play on the field, that it's not lined for from the beginning, they can be painted on with a paint that lasts about the length of the sports season. So, you know, if it's a spring sport, say like lacrosse, and you put the lines on it, by the time football season rolls around, that paint's pretty much gone. The little black square you see down in kind of the left corner of the track, that's kind of a placeholder. What that represents is a storage, concessions, and restroom building. Those can be as elaborate or as simple as you kind of want. We've had some really good luck in the past, like down on our own football field with the announcer's booth and the concession stand we have. With a good local effort that usually can be drummed up and brought out to help build something like that. So basically, that's just a placeholder of probably where that building would go, and not 100% sure of how it'll lay out or what. Like I said, there's bleachers on the straightaway side of the track that'll seat 500 to start. If down the road we wanted more seating, those are a modular system. So the cement pad will be laid for expansion of that, and it's just a matter of buying the parts and the pieces, and you can just add them to both ends of what's existing there. Just to touch real quick on the turf field is about a $500,000 upgrade over a grass field. I've been asked more than once why, you know, where does the value, where do we find $500,000 worth of value in a synthetic field versus a grass field? That same friend of mine who's the athletic director at Morse High just took their grass field out and put a turf field in. And talking with him, the last season that Morse played on their grass field, it was limited strictly to varsity sports, and it was strictly game usage, no practice on it, no youth teams on it. And he said, in the average year when they had the grass field, and I know from coaching youth football, the powers to be over that Morse field were draconian in their policies. You know, if you had a certain amount of rain in a week, they wouldn't allow play on it to keep it. I mean, they had a beautiful field if you'd ever been up there and seen it. So that last year, they had 600 hours of scheduled use is what was supposed to be played on that field, fall and spring sports. He said they didn't make 600 hours of use because of rain or whatever kept teams off of it. The first year they put their turf field in, he said they had almost 2,600 hours of scheduled use scheduled to go on. They were able, by putting that in, to go with a lot of their youth sports programs now use it. It's available for practices, you know, spring practices for teams and stuff. So our thinking was that field is designed to drain, I think if I remember right, 16 inches of water an hour off of it. So you've eliminated any problems with playing on it pretty much in any weather conditions. And by going with the turf, we'd be able to have more of a inclusive policy where, because use isn't what wears it out, you know, it's just time that degrades the materials that it's made of. So pretty much you can put as much use across it as you can, you know, handle schedule-wise. The only other thing I'll tell you is it'll have a 4-pole light system that'll light the field and the track both, so meets or games, whatever, can happen at night. So that's kind of the plan does, I believe, expand and upgrade the parking lot to some degree, not to the degree we would have liked to. I have been able to add some more supplemental parking, but because of the way the geography works up there, it drops off so much on that back side, or drops off, right? It would take a lot to fill that in, but it does, you know, expand it to some degree. So that's kind of where we're at, how we got there. I'm going to turn it over to Dana and Coach Scott and Coach Dion, kind of to talk about the history of the track and the track program, some of the things we've attained with virtually no real practice area or anything for the team, and kind of where they see the values in this project going forward.
All right, so what we're looking at doing is creating an 8-lane championship quality track. And as Andrew said, that would include a turf field for additional sports in the middle, and it would also include the multi-use building for concessions, restrooms, et cetera, et cetera. And there are a lot of benefits to having this sort of facility on campus. First and foremost, it would provide a nice, safe facility with which our athletes were able to train. Right now, it's kind of a real mess how we're training, to put it nicely. So, you know, we've got long jumpers and hurdlers upstairs in the hallway, weaving in and out of, you know, lockers and stuff like that. And here you can see, we've got about 50 kids, the last several years we've had about 50 kids on the track team, and we have no real place to all gather after the initial stretching. So every day we have like a small block of time inside the gym, because in the beginning of the season, everyone's vying for gym time because it's snowy, it's wet, et cetera, et cetera. So after our initial half hour, 45 minutes is up, we go off and do our workouts, and we come back and try to come back together as a team. That's us doing that in the hallway, right? It's really congested, it's really cramped. It's really hard to do. And as you can see, there's our outside long jumping pit, which doesn't get much use because it's really not very safe at all. And then we have throwers throwing in the park, from the parking lot into the grass. And then also sprinters are trying to make do with what little space they have, but we have a real space issue on the school. So once the baseball teams are out there and the middle school teams are out in the backfield, we really don't have any space whatsoever with which to practice. So it becomes a real issue. That is a big one there. Another aspect is providing a facility for hosting meets and playoff or championship quality events as well. And so this would be great for a number of reasons. One is it does bring people into the community. So for example, if we were able to host our conference championship, which our conference does not have a facility that's capable of hosting that kind of event, so we hire like Coney or Lewiston or someplace like that to host it. That's 14 teams from our conference that all converge on that day for this event. And teams can range in size from like 20 up to 50 or 60 kids. So it's a lot of people coming into town at the end of May, beginning of June, when things are kind of quiet down here. Another thing that does is it allows us to not only host potentially a conference meet, but also a state championship. So in Class C, the only Class C school that has this sort of facility is Dover Foxcroft, or Foxcroft Academy. And so what happens is oftentimes a Class C event, they like to do a rotation from north, central, and south. And so obviously Dover Foxcroft always gets that northern hosting ability. But the southern and the central go to Class A schools that are just willing to do it. So assuming that we build it to MPA standards, we would be able to get in on that rotation where we could host a championship meet every handful of years. On the state level, which now we're talking not just 14 teams, we're talking upwards of 50 schools that are being represented with a variety of athletes from each of those schools. Some only have a couple qualify, but others bring a whole 60-person team. So again, we're talking about lots of volumes of people coming in. And what that does is if our boosters club has the concessions open, we're able to make a lot of money that way. And then again, also it brings people to town early in the season, which is pretty nice. It also is a source of pride for our school and community, and we keep kids from going off the peninsula. So this sort of facility obviously would be very nice to sit and watch a spectator event, whether it was track and field in the spring or one of the many ball sports that we have in the fall, football, soccer, or field hockey. It also allows for a free and safe facility for the community to participate and walk or run on. Back several years when I was living in Wiscasset, I'd wake up really early, 5 or so, and go to the Wiscasset track every now and then. And I was always amazed, even when it was pure darkness, there was always like several people out there walking. I think if we were able to build this sort of facility, especially in the summertime, it would get a whole lot of use. And it, as I had mentioned before, it creates a lot of necessary additional field space for athletic programs, and that would also include the physical education department. So field space is a real problem for us, especially in the spring. The track team really has no place to go, but also in the fall, a lot of our teams practice on pretty subpar facilities. Behind the elementary school is kind of nice for just kind of practicing, but to really get a nice flavor of what it is to play field hockey or soccer back there is pretty hard to do. And currently our soccer team is off campus on Clifford Field. So the building of this kind of facility with that nice full field out back would open up some space for us. So Those are all sort of the benefits that we see of building this type of facility at our school.
So the budget. The $4 million question, right? So if you're a taxpayer and you're here tonight and you're thinking, oh my God, these people are freaking crazy. Our goal is to build this with 0 taxpayer dollars. The committee's committed to putting in the legwork and trying to go out and find the level of donors that we would need to make this happen. We don't want to see the building of it laid over onto the tax base. Seeing Ashley sitting here reminds me, and I would just like to thank, Hammond Lumber has done us a huge solid to get this project going. They donated, and I'm sorry, I don't know how much land originally, up back to help facilitate this. And then as we got laying it out and trying to design it, we realized that like another 50-foot wide strip of land would make a huge difference in not losing some of the playground space on the elementary school end. And Hammond jumped right up again and gave us that additional 50 feet. So, you know, already Hammond Lumber's put a huge donation forward in the form of that land to help facilitate this moving forward. And so we'd like to give them the credit and thanks that they certainly deserve for doing that. And Ashley works down at Hammond, so you could pass that along for us. We would appreciate it. Okay, so like I said, we're going to raise all this money. We're not going to ask the taxpayers to kick in for it. And kind of how it breaks down in real simple numbers. This is a lot simpler than if you look at the budget we have. But the track surface runs about $450,000. The parking lot, about $380,000. Synthetic turf, $563,000. The athletic equipment would be goal posts, all your track equipment, soccer goals, pretty much anything you need to actually conduct the sports inside. $82,000. Bleachers and press box, about $240,000. About $300,000 for the lighting. Now, where we're at with the design phase is we have a preliminary design. It hasn't been actually engineered, you know, so we don't have like a set of blueprints for this facility yet. Gale and Associates has sent somebody down to do core samples of the ground up there, so they have an idea of the profile of the ledge. There's a fair amount of blasting that'll have to be done on the far end of it to accommodate it going in there. But because that's where we're at in the design phase, they put in about a 17% contingency?
Yeah.
About a 17% contingency, which is the $480,000 figure you see there, and then they've put in an $85,000 kind of contingency figure, not knowing exactly what the full extent of blasting will be. So that brings us to a total of $3,600,000 and roughly $80,000 with the contingencies built in. The way it usually goes is once you get to that point where you've got the actual engineered plans, that contingency should drop. He said usually they keep about a 10% one in there, I think, going into the project just as a buffer. But he said, he being Bill Seymour, who we've been dealing with at Gale and Associates, that 10% usually covers, you know, and usually after you actually build it, it comes in less than that. The building, the restrooms and all that, like I say, because we don't have a specific plan on what that's going to be, we've put a line holder in at $250,000. So that brings us to about $4 million. A couple of long-range costs that people ask about is, on a yearly basis, it should probably actually cost less than what we spend right now on our other fields with the turf, you drag it with the drag that you get when you build it. Can be dragged with a tractor or something that the maintenance department already has. You know, obviously there's no water, no fertilizer, no mowing. So that yearly cost will drop. The long range cost, replacement of the turf, the life expectancy of the turf is 15 to 17 years roughly. And then there's I believe every 7 to 9 years they've got to resurface and restripe the track. And then the life expectancy of the underpinnings of the track are about 28 to 30 years. Our goal in our fundraising, and I'm not going to put a figure on this, but our goal is to raise some kind of enough seed money to go into some kind of an account that would start to help offset costs of those future replacements. I think the replacement of the track is what, just shy of $1 million in 30 years? Because at that point, everything comes up the pavement, all of it that's underneath. And the turf was 6.
I thought the repaving of the track at 25 to 30 years was 350,000.
So the whole number that we're looking at over 30 years is $1,250,000. And beyond the endowment fund, we also have plans to annually raise the money with concessions and some advertising programs that we have. And that's coming up as well.
So our goal at this point would be between $4 and $4.5 million to raise. I think probably we could do everything we've talked about with about $4 million if you figure in the contingency. And there are some opportunities going into this to possibly save some money if some of the work can be done in what these companies' off-season is. Because most everybody that builds a track, they want it built between the last day of school and the first football game in the fall. The companies that do these are really specialized. So once that window closes on them, for the most part, they're out of work. So if you're in a situation where you can facilitate some of the work being done outside of that window, either late fall or early spring, they said there could be as much as a 10 to 15% project savings with that. So we're hoping maybe if things line up right that we could, take advantage of some of that. So that's where we're at with the budget. I'll turn it back over to Dana. She will tell you kind of some of the ideas we have as far as going forward with fundraising and possible donors.
So we're looking at, and we've actually talked to a professional fundraiser through Liz, that we've bounced this idea against. She's looked at our total plan, and she's also helping us. We are going after some major donors to begin with. A lot of those donations come in the form of matching funds from your community. So we're working at, coming up with some programs to help facilitate raising matching funds with our community. When they donate to your community, they want to see that you have skin in the game too. So that's where that comes from, that idea. We also have naming opportunities for them. Some people do not care about this, but others really do, as far as scoreboard names, press box naming recognition for that. And also a monument in the very beginning of the field when you come up, that would be our major donors, major sponsors, businesses in town if they give certain donations of money. So the other one is also grants. Currently, I have on the list 23 people that we're going after for grants, and I'm expanding it all the time. There are grants with people in Maine. There are opportunities with people that we all know, like Nike and Adidas, and they're not huge, but the more grants you go after, the more you get, the more it adds to our pot. So we're going to try for any and all, and if anyone has any ideas for donors or grants, let me know. And again, with what Andrew said, the initial donations If they come in and we can take advantage of even clearing the land during Christmas break, it's a huge savings. When these people are really not working a ton, they will give us a good break. Additionally, the off-season construction of the track, and that's just where our donations fall and you know, when we're ready to kick this off.
So,
Oh, you want me to?
oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Again, this was ongoing fundraising and maintenance. So over 30 years, they estimate it's, you know, almost $1.3 million, broken down to $42,000 a year. The concessions, we're working with boosters, and we're looking at, you know, additional events that we can host at our facility. We'll continue the lobster roll. The field banners have been a very successful fundraising campaign. They do it in Yarmouth. They get 6,000 a year in Yarmouth, and their facility, their space on their facility isn't as big as ours. And the annual school maintenance comes from factoring in what a typical turf field or grass field would take as far as maintenance every year. And that's sort of just a holding number there. So we're trying to not go to the town and raise your taxes based on the fact that we're going to continue and maintain this. We're going to continue to maintain it ourselves. And-
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. They're just pretty pictures, so you can go ahead.
So time frame, if I'm kind of remembering right what we've talked about, we'd love to see this finished for fall of 2016.
Yes.
Is that right? I've told a couple of people that, and they give me that same look. But our feeling really is this is going to be a project that it's going to take donations, you know, from the community as a whole. But this isn't a project that you're going to build on bake sales and magazine sales and stuff like that. You know, we've really, as a committee and as a community as a whole, we've got to go out and share this vision with people that have the means and the desire to help further this kind of a project. And so we really feel that you're going to get a pretty good idea in a fairly short amount of time whether this is a doable project, whether you're going to find the support that we hope and that we think is out there. So that's kind of the time frame we're looking at. Before I open it up for questions, I'll just open it up to any of the other members on the track committee, Coach Dion, anybody from the trustees or the administration, if they have anything you'd like to add before we open it up for questions. All of you that done a good job, but they're excited to listen to me.
I'd just like to thank the track committee. I mean, it's been a tremendous amount of work from the very beginning onset, and just, you know, from the 5K in the summertime, but the amount of work that the track committee has put in, the hours that you guys have done meeting and working with the site, Dave Benner as well. I mean, to come up with this plan, and you know, this community has rallied behind you know, other things that are good for our community. And, you know, if you're looking at economic development and keeping families here and bringing families in, this is certainly going to be an attraction.
So I guess I'll open it up if anybody has any questions, comments, something you want more clarification on. Eve?
My name is Eve Conlon, and I do think it's a beautiful design and a brilliant idea, and it's something I would like to be able to support. I do think it would be a wonderful asset to the community, and I thank everyone who has been involved in it so far. It's obviously a lot of work, and large number of hours have gone into it, and I appreciate that. I do, however, have grave concerns about the health and environmental risks of the artificial turf specifically, to include the fact that artificial turf can get up to 40 degrees hotter than air temperature, which could make it unsafe for the athletes to actually use, causing dehydration and exhaustion. It can also cause lifelong scars from abrasions and turf burns. And it can also be a bacteria breeding ground, and MRSA is a particular concern, especially with open lesions related to playing on the field itself. The crumb rubber that's used beneath the grass itself can be carried in to people's homes on their clothing, and it can be ingested, especially by like soccer goalies. And there have been studies that link that to cancers. Some, especially soccer goalies, are now developing blood cancers, lymphomas and leukemias, developing masses the size of soccer balls within their chest related to playing on these fields. So that's a big concern. And this artificial turf can also trigger asthma attacks. The dust can cause breathing problems in the athletes that play on them. And also, when it rains, there can be toxic runoff, which can contaminate the groundwater. And also, once the artificial turf is installed, you always have to replace it with artificial turf. And from what I understand, it sometimes has to be replaced every 5 to 10 years, and the cost associated with that can be pretty steep. And also, then there's the issue of disposal. Who's going to want to take this junk when you're done with it? So those are my concerns. But again, I do think it's a wonderful concept, and if we just use good old green grass and didn't treat it with pesticides, or just let it, so what if there's some dandelions, as long as it's nice, plain green grass, who cares? I think it's the benefits of the artificial turf don't outweigh the health risks.
I can address a few of those things. I'm not going to stand here and try and convince anybody that I'm a turf expert or a grass expert. I will assure you that we went into this not only looking at what the most beneficial surface as far as getting the most use out of the field, I've got kids that play. I've got a son that plays football. I would guess most football players probably spend more time on the ground rolling around in it than most soccer players or, some of the other sports. So I certainly wouldn't advocate putting in anything that I thought would jeopardize my son's health or anybody else's kid's health. That being said, like I say again, I'm not going to say I've got all the answers. I can answer a couple of the questions that you, issues that you brought up. The MRSA thing that you brought up, because we've asked a lot of these questions of the people that were designing the track, and the guys that designed the track, as he always said, they don't really have a dog in the fight, because they'll put in grass, they'll put in turf. They don't sell it, so it's not like they have any reason to see you go one way or the other. The MRSA, one of the things you brought up about the extreme heat that's generated by the turf because of the color of the black rubber and everything, that heat kills bacteria and stuff that grows in it. He said there has cases of MRSA in synthetic turf that you hear about are mainly in indoor facilities where the heat doesn't build so much in it. The 5 to 10 year or 5 to 7 year replacement, I haven't ever heard that. Everything that we were told in our research as we looked into the turf was 15 to 17 years. I'm not saying there aren't fields out there that have had to be replaced sooner than later. As far as when we're done with the turf, like it, don't like it, any trash facility will take it, because it's nothing more. It's made out of the same form of plastic that the plastic water bottles are made out of. So trash to energy will take it. Recycling, exactly. The heat, I don't have the information in front of me. They did studies on the difference in surface temperature heat between synthetic turf and the grass. The major heat difference is at the surface itself, so down around your feet, and then it drops fairly quickly, you know, every foot you came off of the actual surface. But they will tell you, you know, it is definitely hotter than playing on grass. The one thing we have going for us being up here is that most of the sports that would be played on that field would be played either in the fall or in the spring. You know, and I'm not saying that we don't get hot days in the fall or hot days in the spring, but for us, in the kind of geographical area we're located in, you don't get those extreme temperatures being as much of a factor. Some of the southern states, what they actually do is they will water it down if the extreme heat's an issue. Runoff, Gale and Associates, and any of the stuff we can get you links to or point you in the right direction. Like I say, I'm not going to say I'm getting it all spot on, but they tracked, I think it was 5 artificial fields over a span of time, and I can't remember exactly how long, but they put in test pits around these fields and then studied them and tracked them for lead, mercury, a lot of the components of the rubber that people were afraid were going to leach out over time. And the one field that showed higher levels of bad stuff was actually a test pit that was put in around a turf field, but that had a number of grass fields around it. And what they were finding in their test pit were traces of all the fertilizers and that were actually leaching out of the grass fields. I'll be completely honest with you, fiscally, one of the issues, yes, we have the long-term replacement, but to maintain a grass field to the specs that they tell you need to maintain it to, so that you don't only have a nice field for a year or two, it's about between $20,000 and $25,000 a year, and a huge chunk of that comes because of the cost of irrigation. And you've got to water it. If you don't water it, you aren't going to have a field. And one of my concerns going forward is there's been a lot of talk, I know, with the comprehensive planning cycle in Boothbay about our watershed and, you know, the volumes of water we have or don't have. And I think Dana said today it's like 56,000 gallons of water a year, roughly, over a 4-month period.
Just, yeah, per season.
Right.
So.
To keep one irrigated, you know, to what it takes to maintain it. And my fear is not only, you know, when fiscal times are tough, the first, you know, probably one of the first things you're not going to do is you're not going to go water your field. And the other concern would be down the road, you know, you have a dry summer and the water company puts out there, you know, you can't water anything mandate, you know, and where are you? And then the biggest thing, like I said, is just being able to get as many people on it as we can. I'm guessing that you probably saw the thing on NBC News the other night, and just one thought I had, take it for what it's worth. I'm not saying there's not, that what that coach said isn't a link, but one thought I had after watching that, and I read all down through the link that they gave, and, you know, most of the information I saw said that the studies to this point showed that, you know, it was safe. But my biggest thought that I walked away from that with is if there was that direct a contact between the turf or the rubber in the turf and this cancer, I would have thought you'd see a lot bigger rash of cases of it maybe in and among, I mean, you've got kids that play football from the time they're 5 years old, you know, and some of them all the way up through their professional careers, you know, and your running backs, your ends, you know, they spend a tremendous amount of time and, you know, rolling around and tackled and this stuff. So, like I said, that was just a thought I had, not saying I know or I don't, you know, but that was a thought I had, that if that was really that direct a link between the two, that maybe you'd see it popping up in other athletes and not just soccer goalies. So, like I say, I felt like, or the committee felt like we, you know, listened or, you know, investigated, you know, I won't say as much as we could, I guess, to the point where we felt comfortable. We put it through we asked all the coaches as far as surface, what they'd like to see. We brought it, you know, the majority of the committee was in favor of it. We brought it to the trustees and they listened to a presentation from Gale and Associates on it. And so that's where we came up with it. But, you know, like I said, none of us would be looking to put something in that we thought was going to be detrimental to our kids, you know.
Do you think it warrants some more research?
Yeah,
Looking into it? I think the more you read about it, the less
Actually,
likely you would
I
be to.
like to put my thoughts on that because I labored this over the weekend after watching the NBC and looking on the studies. And when I started reading that and following it, I kind of like got a little scared until I finally saw who's publishing the study, who's supporting the study. And when you look on who's supporting the study, you get two different views. And until I finally found the Penn State University, where they had the Center for Sports Surface Research, and the jury still, there's still no definite study that it's causing cancer. They did a lot of study of injuries, and actually on injuries, there's less injury on the turf field because of the way the absorption and the impact. That's how based from the research there. So, but there's still no link there that's caused. I'll be more scared of my kids developing skin cancer if they don't put sunblock, because one fatality on melanoma alone every 57 minutes, according to the study. So, rather than the scare on that, the turf field. Yeah, there's still no definite study on that one. That on my research on that. Most of the studies that came out, or most of the information, is from who's ever manufacturing. If you're producing the grass, then you show all this thing. If you're producing the turf, then it's gonna show this thing. But the independent study is still not out there.
I'll tell you, I started out pro-grass, 100%. And I'm a research hound. I have done a lot of research on this, and I have mixed feelings. If I was standing in South Carolina, I wouldn't put it in. They're putting them in, you know, a ton of artificial turf fields down south, one, because of water, because of just watering them, and because of fertilizing and pesticides and stuff like that. But we don't have the problems that I see the South having as far as the heat factors. And also, if you have a grass field in the South, your growing season is so much longer. So you have a better shot at maintaining a nice field. So I looked at our field here and really didn't, I don't care. My kids, actually my daughter just joined soccer, but for the most part, I was in it for the track. And for the pride, and for the fact that, you know, when I went to school, homecoming and the floats kind of went around the field, and it's just such a community resource. So I really didn't, again, have a dog in the fight to begin with. But the things that are making me lean more towards the artificial turf are that longevity of play. The fact that we can have kids on the field in the middle of summer playing ultimate frisbee, because that's an option on this field, is to stick ultimate frisbee poles in here. And just having kids being able to play on it from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night without damaging it. I mean, we have to cancel games because of the football field conditions down there. And by putting in an artificial field, we would actually save the other fields, and those fields would be able to recover far faster. We will continue. I'm totally diligent on this. There are major advances happening. In fact, the turf itself, the grass, has improved tenfold. And the 5 years replacement is no longer. The fields that they have now are much longer. They used to use sand as a base, then they went to the rubber tire crumb. And I know that rubber tire crumb sounds scary, and again, you can find studies on both sides, 100%. You can find studies all day long on both sides. I'm so confused now on the issue, it's crazy. But we will continue. I won't stand behind something that I think is gonna make the health of our community diminished. So, we'll continue that. We have a fundraising period of time to continue studying that. And, you know, again, we'll take all the help we can get.
Can I just add?
Yeah.
I too am concerned about the tire, the fill, but they are coming up with more organic. I mean, they're talking about coconut husks. I mean, they are all the time coming up with new ways to help those little fake blades stand up. And so, yeah, we're not going to give up on making sure that this is okay for all our kids.
I'd just like to say a couple things if I could too.
Go ahead, Brian.
I'm Brian Dion, football coach and health teacher, and I have an organic farm. I'm very concerned, same thing with health concerns. And as we looked at it as a group, and the athletic director there and all the coaches there, what we are limited with here is our facility space. We don't have a lot of space to put all our sports teams. And the track, I think, is really important for our school. It's our biggest team sport, and they don't even have a place to practice. And I'm saying that like was, and now I happen to be a coach on the team. But before I wasn't, and I always thought the same thing. Boy, can't man. And I was watching them practice in the hallway and all that, and going, boy, that must be really difficult. Now I know it is really difficult, and it isn't as safe as it could be. And it's a challenge as a coach, and to provide a good experience for our kids here. And so I wanted to be a part of the track thing, and then we were looking at the space up back, and I've got kids in school too, and putting the track does eliminate some field space too for us. And when we're looking at all the youth teams that play on our fields, if we put in a grass field in the middle of the track, we are limiting ourselves with the amount of field space, potentially even greater than what we have now. And I do see the track as it needs to happen, for our school, and it would be a great thing for our community, and the walking on it and the running on it and everything. I've seen that in other communities I've been in. But we do need a place to have practice, and one of the things that's hurt us, as a football coach, there have been many times when I haven't had a field to practice on. I've gone a whole week before a game and not have a field to practice on for the week because it's been raining and it's just unplayable, and we destroy the field. And I've been in the gym here at school, and our gym is really tiny. Football's not played out there, so it's a challenge. And I think that, as we did the research, the synthetic field made the most sense for us, and for having a lot of ability to have a lot of kids playing and active, and not having to shut down practice or practice in a facility that's not, acceptable. And when you look at where we play football currently with the baseball diamond as well, and the lip there, and there's some other safety things there, and the doctor was saying about injuries, the synthetic turfs now are much greater. And one thing I didn't share with you is, and I used to work in college athletics. I worked at the University of Maine, and I was involved in putting in a turf field there. That wasn't what I was trying to do. I was just a little guy helping out with the project, and then they put the project on me as far as coordinating a lot of those efforts and putting that field in there. Now the turf we got at that time, 15 years ago, wasn't the same quality that they're talking about now. I've seen all those specs, and they've since replaced the UMaine's field surface, and it is a better surface than what they started on. You know, and it has improved. I still have concerns. I haven't had enough time to wrap my head around the report that people saw on TV. You know, I'm willing to look into more with the rest of the group and alternatives, but right now, this, you know, to me, appears to be the better choice for our school and our situation.
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to get up and say something. I apologize. Kevin Anthony, trustee of the school system and resident of Boothbay. I agree with Brian. We have a huge need for field around here. But I don't think that turf field is the way to go because of my overriding concern for health problems because of the rubber in the field. I know that if you take a rubber tire and you set it out in the sun, in 50 years, there's nothing left of it. So I can't believe that they tell you the 1/8 or 1/4 inch little rubber things, after 50 years, there's no deterioration. I cannot believe that. And if the outside of that rubber, the little rubber particles, deteriorates some, then all the stuff in the rubber is out blowing around, it's going down to the field, the kids are breathing it, it's in our soil. And some of the things that are in those rubber tires are cadmium, benzene, barium, arsenic, lead, acetone, aniline, chromium, cobalt, copper, isoprene, latex, lead, nickel, nylon, phenol, flame retardants, styrene, toluene, trichloroethylene, methyl, ethyl, ketone, mercury, and manganese. I think in long term, this is a really bad thing. I think that's going to be like a Superfund site up there. When all this stuff starts crumbling and becoming part of the surface there. They give us 80,000 tires, and when they replace the field, they just suck up all the rubber and they give it back to us because they don't want it back. We're stuck with all that rubber forever. Nobody's going to take it back.
Actually,
And we're
the reason they're doing that, but the reason they used to take all that crumb off and throw it away. Now, they take it and they clean it and they put it back. In fact, the fields that they were worried about with MRSA, they tested as far as they said, well, maybe we'll put something in place where we make it mandatory for places to suck up the crumb, wash it, and put it back. But they actually, people were looking at that, found that it wasn't necessary for the MRSA at the time, so.
I hope I'm wrong, but that is what I think will happen. I think in long term, the rubber will crumble and everything in it will be released and we'll have a real problem there.
Right.
That's just my concern, and I feel like I have to say
Trying to think outside the box of the concern about the tires. Is there any talk about tire companies, people who change tires for 30 years, touching it, the heat when they're around it? You know, are there other studies in the way that tire is used in other products that it's affected people over long-term exposure or anything like that? Any?
Well, I don't want to scare you guys. But they are using tires. They're using tires in a lot of products these days. They take the tires and they do the crumb, and they're using it in, I know this is horrible to say, on the website it shows that they use it in baby toys now, and they actually also use it in chewing gum. So I don't know what the answer is. Again, I've seen so many studies that it's a blur to me right now. So I haven't seen any definitive studies about, okay, you know, at this tire dump, what is the leaching out? I'll look for them. I definitely will.
And like I said, as a committee, I guess the only assurance that we can give you is that moving forward, until we hit that deadline where to move forward with the project, we've got to decide 100% definitively what we're using. We will continue to look into, you know, the safety issues of it. As you can see, the committee has both people on it that would like turf and people that don't necessarily think turf is a good idea. So you can move forward, I guess, knowing that both schools of thought are being represented on the committee, and you know, in the end, we'll do what ends up being the best all the way around. Brian?
So speaking of that, I don't know if this is the appropriate forum for that, but sort of the next step in this is that approval process, right? And so I don't know if that's something that we're gonna.
As trustees and the committee jointly, we studied this through many meetings and discussions and looked at studies. And in the end, the trustees voted to move forward in the design process with the turf, feeling that it was safe and the best choice for our school. Of course, that's not set in stone until we actually start construction, but we needed to do that for the design phase. But at this point, we have approved the turf.
Yeah.
I will tell you
because
that-
it's being funded privately, then there's no sort of discussion or referendum or anything like that. It's really that's how it will be decided and sort of moved forward. Is that right?
Well, the school will take possession of it in the end once it's constructed, and
Yeah.
so the trustees aren't going to approve a facility that we don't feel safe for our children. I believe it will be the trustees' final decision as to what goes in for a turf.
But also initially, to plan for turf, it's very difficult to do a track and have a grass field and then flip it over to turf. It's much easier to plan for a turf field and say, we change our mind and put grass in. And Beth will tell you all day long that it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for drainage. So if you plan for turf, I mean, going up to the last minute, you can pull the plug and say, all right, we're going for grass. But at least that you plan for that facility.
But if you do put the turf down, once you do that, you can never go back to grass.
Yeah, you can.
There you
Well,
go.
you have to remove that subsurface and then come in and put down a whole new bed of topsoil and sand.
But actually, it's doable
It is.
because the designers of the track told us, you're better off to start with turf, and if you don't like it, go back to grass, than you are to start with grass and want to put turf in. And it doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but where the issue comes is there's a cement curb that's laid all the way around the perimeter of where the turf goes that it gets attached to. And because you can see how close to the edge of the track the field comes, what happens is they end up having to dig out underneath the inside lane of the track to pour that curb and to facilitate the drainage. And Bill Seymour said there's a lot of the companies that are real hesitant to do that, because if in the process that inner lane of the track gets broke in or the edges get snapped off, then you've got a bigger issue with then having to repair the track. I'm sorry, Steve.
So, the football team's gonna be the primary team practicing on it, right?
It was decided amongst the coaches, as I understand it, because we weren't at the meeting with the coaches. In the fall, that would be the primary home for the football team, practice-wise and game-wise. And correct me if I'm wrong, Coach, but the line of thinking behind that was the football team kind of has the biggest volume of equipment that's got to be moved from one place to another. But the plan is that field hockey, soccer, all the teams would have some gameplay on it throughout the season so that everybody could benefit from it. But it would be for the fall, it would be the primary home of the football team for practice and for games.
And just my thought on that is that the soccer goalies, if this study that isn't really a study yet is true, our soccer goalies at least, and teams from away are not going to be on it. I don't think enough to. They're only going to be on it. You have to think, how many soccer games are there? Like 18, if that. And if they're home, that's only 9. So you have to think that it's not like they're practicing on it every day. And also without the turf, you're just back to the main issue of people aren't gonna be able to play on it if it rains a lot. And so you're defeating the purpose of gaining more field space.
This field would be able to play on any rain condition. And it is, I mean, I may be speaking of myself, but I am the trustee.
No, yeah, I'm saying if it was grass, we wouldn't be able to use it. Like,
If it's grass, no, you wouldn't be able to use it, but as turf, everybody be able to use it. And it is our feeling that all teams will use it, field hockey, soccer, and football. I think field hockey probably being the most important. To play on turf would be amazing for field hockey. But I have to disagree that it is going to be primarily football. It is going to be for all sports.
Well, yeah, I mean, the end game is for, to put as much use on it as possible. Like I say, I was just going by the conversation that the coaches had about.
I'm just a stickler for the other sports.
Yeah, well, like I say, I mean, if we weren't trying to encompass as many sports as possible, then we'd put grass in,
Yeah.
Stacy?
So we would not be the first people to deploy a turf field, right? So you say more just,
Yep.
they must have done copious amounts of research. There must be several other places around the state and the country that we could get access to. So for people who are very concerned about it and the long-term benefits, there's got to be enough history with these companies to be able to take a look at their studies, take a look at their information. So when people get links, or are there people that they can go and talk to?
We can get that and get it out, because
We were given quite a bit of information from Gail.
right. The guy from Gale and Associates said that the Penn Bay study that Dr. Alamo referenced, they claim is the most middle-of-the-road study that's been done on it, because they neither sell turf nor do they put in grass. So they don't, that study was done as an independent study.
Penn State, just in case some people
Penn
wants to
State.
look at it.
So, I mean, my point is there's a lot of information out there.
Right.
And people who have already gone through this, who are putting these types of fields in for their children, and no one wants to do anything that's not safe for children. So people want access to it, they should feel.
Jim Chayos, Assistant Bay Town Manager. So I have a couple of questions. I'll try to put them in a logical order. How many people actually participate in the track sports program?
50, Coach?
Yep.
Yeah, 25%.
Yeah, no kidding. And then secondly, so the town of Boothbay pays a significant portion of the school bill, so I think you'll get a lot of support from the town of Boothbay as an organization in trying to figure out how to raise funds without a tax levy. Can you tell me a little bit about that strategy? I mean, because 2015 would be an aggressive timetable. Was it 2016?
2016.
Either way, it's still an aggressive timetable. Can you just give the 30,000 foot level of what that strategy would look like?
Well, we've had a couple of, I say, pretty promising inquiries, people actually asking us about it. But like I say, one of them, when the first conversation was had, we didn't have anywhere near enough concrete plan or, numbers or anything for them to jump on or decide they didn't want to. Like I say, I guess we're gonna go about it like some of the other places in town that have, accomplished pretty big feats, the Y with the aquatics facility. You've got the botanical gardens. We're really fortunate, I guess, for the small areas we live in to have the amount of potential donors, I guess, in one collective area. So our real hope, and in talking with Christine Owens, who is she's a professional fundraiser, is a career. She's a friend of Liz Brown's, and she's come on board free of charge to help guide us in you know, the direction to go. But what we're really hoping for is in a few of the first contacts that we've had, and possibly a couple of people that have approached us, is if we could get somebody that would come on board with a fairly substantial donation in the way of a matching grant, kind of like what they did with the Y in the aquatics facility, to help give us that kickoff, to help rally support. And like I say, that, going back to Chris's comment, that's why we've tried to make it, the facility as a whole, functional for as many groups as we possibly could, because to accomplish a goal like this in a town of this size, you really are going to need 100% really of the community behind you. And like I say, so I guess we're kind of hoping it'll be a combination of some big high-end donors, and along with the grassroots fundraising that has helped to develop, you know, provide us with some of the things that, you know, we're lucky enough to have down here. My thinking on it is, I think a lot of the people that live here, maybe in the summer, and our potential donors, I think one of the reasons they like giving to projects in communities like this is because a lot of them, where they come from or where they are most of the time, you never experience a sense of community, you know, that we have here, that it takes to build like the aquatics facility or the field house. So, you know, that's our game plan at this point. And like I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, if it takes us a little longer than that, I mean, we're prepared for that. But again, no amount of bake sales or 5Ks is gonna build this, you know. So I really think when we hit the ground with this, you're gonna know in not too long a time frame what kind of support you're gaining for it, you know.
And a lot of potential major donors don't want to be involved in a 10 to 20-year project. I mean, we sort of put a fuse on it. And the other part of that is we were not in the position to go after grants, because you need a solid plan, an engineered plan, and then a solid budget to even write for those. So we're at that spot now.
Well, one last question.
Yeah.
If I can monopolize a little bit. One of the things that I have on my plate to do is to set up a meeting with the superintendent and the athletic director about a concept plan that the town's working on that has maybe some overlapping concepts here. I was wondering if maybe I could elaborate and have some members of whatever you're calling it, a task force or
Community on track.
community on track, just to share perspective and some concepts.
Sure.
So if I can work with the superintendent, she can help me put
Yeah.
it together.
Yeah, that'd be great. Heather?
I have a question about when you kind of were talking about the field and what the primary use is going to be. Of course, I'm way over in the corner still. So if the primary is going to be football and the practice and stuff, does that mean someone like the soccer team that's, you know, an up-and-coming developing team would be down where the football field is now, or is that going to be now used for something like the junior high, because the junior high football might not be, this is primary for
No.
football? Like, how is that system going to work?
That was a big part of that whole discussion. Everybody, you know, the athletic director and everything there, and as a team, we looked at different, okay, what if it's so-and-so's primary, what if we have no primary, we just use it for games, what if we just use it for this, what if we just use it for that? It wasn't me saying, it's gotta be football.
I'm not saying that,
Just so you know.
that's what just came out
And
of
so
the
what,
conversation.
and a big part of that was, yes, that would, since football was moving there, soccer was on campus and on that field.
Like I said,
Youth and varsity.
Okay.
And,
If I-
and because there's so many youth football teams, there's different levels of them, and where they practice and everything, it ended up making more sense to go.
So
On turf
the
with
school
all
would
those
retain
teams.
use of the land from down here with the town, and it would still be used for the baseball, and then something like the soccer, not softball, would be over that way and not up that.
Well, the football will
Clifford.
end up practicing down there too. Because this new field play there, I'd like to see soccer play there, and I'd like to see football play there. And some arrangement for practice. This is gonna be a state-of-the-art field. All the teams should be able to play on it,
Yeah.
not just football.
Like I say, if I open the can of misunderstanding on this,
Well, no, because the comment was just said, and I'm not knocking it, I'm just, just wondering.
And the reason for that, the reason for establishing something as a prime like that is because of all of the gear that goes along with my particular sport, in terms of those sports, and where you put it, and where you have it, because you can't just lug it from one field for practice, then down to another field, and then down to a different one. That's just a nightmare. So we looked at football just staying on that field and all of that. The issue was, then you're bringing all the youth teams down because they practice currently up here, and it put a lot of stress on that field, which already is not in great shape, and would get even more use that way. And so we looked at other possibilities, and that's when soccer, because we also looked at field hockey being up there, because field hockey on turf is awesome. It's a really fast-paced game, and I was at UMaine, and when the game went to turf, it's just, it's amazing. And you definitely want to have games on there, and everything, certainly.
So I
but
think
just for that reason.
the end all of it will be that, as it is now, Alan Crocker, the
Yeah,
principal,
I think-
they'll schedule what happens on
And
that field,
I appreciate the
so.
enthusiasm, was where my team's gonna play, I love that thinking. And I think this is an exciting project. I think the bottom line is, as always, I would expect that the athletic director and the principal will schedule teams and practices where they need to be according to equipment and things like that, and make sure that everyone has an appropriate playing field to play on. And this is gonna open up some space. We don't have the answers to that right now. We're trying to, not put the cart before the horse. So I think those decisions will all get made, as they usually do, with what's best for the kids and the teams.
And that's why I'm not the superintendent. I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Well, Steve Lorraine, I'm one of the trustees. Once this facility is up and going, it's going to have to be maintained.
Right.
You're going to have to invite, you're going to have a schedule of all the other events that can be held there. They're going to have to be held there, just in order, because right now, Dave's maintaining one field, but there's some serious maintenance that has to go on here no matter what. It's not a maintenance-free facility.
Well,
After a game, trash still has to be picked up, you know what I'm saying?
Right, I guess I'm thinking their mind on that, whether
Well, it
right or
almost has to be
wrong.
run like a little bit of a business.
Right,
long
I
term.
guess my only thought is whatever game gets played here isn't getting played somewhere else. So I didn't see, or we didn't see, that it was going to add to the workload necessarily, because instead of a football game having to be picked up after down there.
Sure,
But the difference is, if in the end we go with the turf, you're not going to mow it, you're not going to fertilize it, you're not going to stripe it, so.
Understood, but at games, I've seen some kids take their gum out and drop it on the concrete. But, I'm just saying, all these things, at the end of 15 years, you have to replace that rug.
Right.
The money needs to be there, otherwise it becomes a burden. So I mean, if there's a conference game that can be held there over the weekend or whatever it is, it needs to be lined up and scheduled. So
Oh, yeah.
we play 8 football games, home games a year, something like that.
I think it's a total of 8,
4.
right?
Yeah.
Depends on the year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So track meets, I mean, if it's a state quality track, we need to have track meets there.
The MPA covers the cost
Yeah.
for maintenance crews and
Crews.
things like that for
Yeah.
state level facilities.
Sure.
That's covered by the MPA.
We also have been, I've been talking to facility managers, and it's been great, because my last conversation was a place in Connecticut, and the woman said, be sure when you get that maintenance building, be sure to put an office in, because they need to coordinate your volunteers, and they need to, they work with not only boosters, but Rotary organizations, and then senior organizations to help run their facilities. And we, again, will continue. We're not reinventing the wheel here. I'm stealing ideas from anyone I can get.
And I mean, I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that this facility, if we go raise every nickel privately, and even put some money in some kind of an account for down the road, I mean, I'm not gonna stand here and tell you that that's never gonna cost the taxpayers of Boothbay Harbor a nickel, But the way I'm looking at it is, if you've got a group of people that's willing to build a $4 million asset and give it to the school, you got to be willing to put a little bit of skin in the game at some point, And one of the big reasons that we want to raise that extra money not only to potentially take a lot of the bite out of future maintenance of the big dollar items, the carpet, resurfacing and striping and stuff like that. But, if you find that donor that's willing to give you $2 million towards this, having that money in an account is an assurance to them that in 15 years, if tax dollars are tight and, that there's some money there that's going to keep that maintained to a level that they're still going to want to see their name on the side of it when they drive by, So that's along with, the other line of thinking with trying to raise enough to help offset that cost. Mr. Bradley?
My name's Tony Bradley. I'm a resident of Boothbay. I have a grandson coming along who may well participate on this track at some point. Has there been any thought within the committee or anyone as to raising enough money beyond the cost of initial construction, whatever it may be, in the form of raising enough money to actually start an endowment fund of some sort that's sort of self-perpetuating? You see what I'm getting at?
Well, that's kind
Not just
of
raising the money year by year by whatever means possible that seems to have already explained. But above and beyond that, and actually investing it so that it may maintain itself, or at least in part.
Well, that is our thought. That extra money that we would raise at the beginning would be a lump sum that would be put into an account like that.
I'm talking $4.5 million. I'm talking maybe $5-6 million, maybe more. I know it sounds extravagant, especially in these times, but that's how a lot of other institutions have done it over time. True, they've had alumni or alumnus or whatever that has helped that cause out, but it has definitely worked.
Well, trust me, if we skate through the first 4.5, I'll jump on to the next 1.5 million. I mean, I've got, I lay awake now trying to figure out how we're gonna get to the 4, so, but like I said, we aren't, we're dumb enough to try, so,
Might as well go for it.
go big and go home, right?